Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, no matter where you are out there in the Facebook world. I am Abba Perelmuter, and this is Torah Study with Rabbi P from Long Beach, California. I'm here surrounded by my good friends. Let everybody give them a shout out. There you go, there you go, there you go. You see, an enthusiastic crowd here today. Okay, for this very special Torah study lesson where we gather once a week to go through the Torah. And we've been discussing in the past couple of weeks all about sacrifices, the tabernacle. Last week we talked about Aaron's two sons that brought a foreign fire, unfortunately passed away and disrupted the joyous occasion of the inauguration of the tabernacle. And this week we're going to get into something that is much more, I wouldn't say much more relevant, because the entire Torah, of course, is relevant, but we are going to be talking about the laws of kashrut, of kosher, okay? Because that's, all of a sudden, the Torah stops talking about the tabernacle and about the inauguration and gets into the nitty-gritty laws of what we can eat and what we can't eat. All right, and that's what we're going to be doing here today. Now, you understand, of course, in the next hour, we're never going to be able to tackle the entire spectrum of the kosher world. There's many rules and regulations, hundreds of different little details about keeping kosher, but at least we'll go over from the parsha, we'll go over some of the general rules of what makes things kosher and what makes things unkosher. Okay. So here we start with chapter number 11, if you want to follow along with me on page 596 in the Stone edition. But if you're following at home, it's chapter 11 in the book of Leviticus. The book of Leviticus, chapter number 11, where God says like this. 596, if you're following. Okay. God speaks to Moses and to Aaron, because sometimes you know that this is the pattern in the Torah. Before God gives a commandment, he usually addresses Moses. This time he addresses Aaron as well. Because I think that Aaron, in his anguish of losing two sons, he didn't denounce God. He didn't become cynical. So God gives him a reward and says, you know what? I'm going to include you as well. So you come along with Moses. Come on, come here. Speak to the people of Israel, and this is what I want you to tell them. These are the animals that you can eat from the cattle that walk on the face of the earth. Now, let's start way back. When Adam and Eve were created, they were put into the Garden of Eden. Put into the Garden of Eden, and God says to them explicitly in the Torah, this is going to be your food. Anything that grows or anything that grows from the trees, vegetation, go for it. So you know what? You are going to be completely what we call vegetarian. Okay? That makes no reference to eating any type of animal whatsoever. So you want berries, you want, what else is there that you can eat? Kale. Now you know why Adam wanted out of the Garden of Eden? Come on. You can have kale, you can have lettuce, you have a few berries, some nuts, sunflower seeds. You can mix it together with some other sunflower seeds and throw in a pumpkin seed, just for a little bit of variety. Okay? 3 hours later, Adam is begging, please let me out of here. No. So in the beginning, from the Torah's point of view, people were all vegetarian. No meat. You know why? Because in the Garden of Eden, the animals were okay. They all got along, and everybody seemed to live a nice, happy life. Next thing you know, we're out of the Garden of Eden. Jump forward. A few generations later, we have this fellow by the name of Noah. Noah then builds an ark. The world is destroyed through a flood, and Noah rebuilds the world. And at that time, God says to him, okay, you know what, if you want to eat, you can eat from the animal kingdom as well. So that was the first time that we see in the Torah where people were allowed actually to eat. Now, I'm not saying that they weren't eating animals beforehand. They may have been eating animals all along. But at least from the Torah's perspective, we know that from Noah on, animals were permitted to be eaten. Okay, which animals, what animals, how the animals, whatever it was, we don't know. God then differentiates between pure animals and non-pure animals, but it's not explicit exactly what is kosher, what is not kosher, how you eat. until it comes to chapter number 11. Chapter number 11 is now going to lay down the rules and regulations. You know what? Maybe the best thing to be is vegetarian. God is not saying that. But since people have a craving for meat and you want to eat meat, okay, well, I'm going to allow you to eat meat, but this is going to be the kind of meat that you're going to be allowed to eat. And what are those? So then he goes into, he says like this, there are two signs for a kosher animal. Okay? When I say a kosher animal, I mean a domesticated animal that's like a farming animal, like a cow and this and that, those things. Kol mafresas parsa, v'shesas sesa, process, any animal that has a split hoof, meaning that it's completely split, not halfway, not 3/4 way, not 90%. It has to be completely split. Their hoofs, the umaligera, and chews its cud, which means it has multiple number of stomachs and it brings up the cud and re-chews it, swallows it, re-chews it, and swallows it. Those are the two signs. These are the animals that you may eat. So what are the two signs of a kosher animal? Number one, that it has split hoofs. Number two, that it chews its cud. It has to have both of these characteristics in order to be a kosher animal. Then, interestingly enough, Moses is going to go and now enumerate a number of animals which you think maybe they could be kosher or not be kosher. And he talks about the rabbit and the hare. The rabbit and the hare are not kosher because even though they chew their cud, they don't have split hoofs. And the camel, because again, same thing, chews its cud, but it doesn't have split hoofs. So even though it has one of the two characteristics, camels and hares and rabbits are out. And then he throws in that there's one animal in the world that has split hooves but doesn't chew its cud, and that is the pig, the chazer. Okay, the chazer. Okay, so the chazer is not kosher, even though that it has split hooves, completely split, but it doesn't chew its cud, and that's it. That ends that discussion. So which animals are you allowed to eat? If you're on a farm, you're going to look around and you say, okay, how about this cow? Does the cow have split hoofs? Yes. Does it chew its cud? Yes. Okay, it may be eaten. What about a horse? A horse? No. Come on, a majestic animal like a horse. You don't want to eat it. You don't want to eat it. You don't want to. You want to ride it, but you don't want to eat it. Okay, you don't want to eat the horse because it doesn't have split hoofs. And okay, that's it. So a horse is out. A horse is out. What about a buffalo? Kosher. Buffalo is kosher. Majestic animal, but it's kosher, has split hoofs, chews its cud. A ram, kosher. All of these animals. Deer, kosher. Although it's hard to find a deer, it's hard to track down a deer, but it's a kosher animal. So those are all domesticated animals. What about the non-domesticated animals? What about a jaguar? So it doesn't have either of these characteristics, doesn't chew its cud or have split hoofs. So that, of course, even though the Torah doesn't enumerate them, because people ask, well, maybe only these 4 animals are not kosher. Maybe only the hare, the badger, the hare, the rabbit, and the camel and the chazer. Maybe these 4 animals, maybe other animals are kosher. No. Of course not. I mean, if they don't have either of the characteristics, why should they be kosher? So an elephant? Kosher? No. Like a lion? No. A cat? What do you call those guys with the long necks? Giraffes? Yes. Correct. Yes, kosher. Okay, now I'm going to challenge you. You could go to any restaurant in the world. Any kosher restaurant in the world, starting from Tel Aviv to New York to Baltimore, anywhere you want to go. I'm challenge you to go in there and ask them for a giraffe steak. You will not get a giraffe steak. You will not get a giraffe. Even though a giraffe has split hoofs and chews its cud, we don't eat giraffes. How come we don't eat giraffes? Why don't we eat giraffes? Because first of all, could you imagine the shaykhit, the guy that slaughter? First of all, you have to be like on one of those things that takes you up and down. What do you call those? Like a cherry picker. No. Do you shecht it down below? Do you shecht it up there? And second of all, who would want to come on? You want to shecht a giraffe? Come on, a giraffe. You're not going to shecht. So giraffe has the 2 characteristics, but we've lost at least we've lost the tradition of eating giraffe meat, even though technically it's kosher, but we haven't had giraffe meat ever. I mean, I've never heard, seen one place ever in Yiddishkeit where people sat down to a meal and they served giraffe soup or something like that. Okay? But it has one of those, it has both characteristics. So technically, giraffe meat is kosher. Okay. All right. Now, so commentators ask a question, Lama. Why? What's so special about split hoofs and chewing its cud? All right. That's a very good question. So, number one is, we've talked about before of the different types of mitzvahs that there are. There are mishpatim, there are those logical, rational mitzvahs that every civilization has to enact in order to be able to survive. All the civil laws that we have in Judaism, don't steal, keep honest in business, don't kidnap, don't do anything like that, whatever it is. Those are logical, rational rules. Why? We understand. We want to live as a people. We want to be able to live in a normal society. You can't murder. If you're going to murder, the society will fall apart. If you steal, society will fall apart. You don't have a justice system, society will fall apart. So those are rational. You don't have to be specifically Jewish. You don't have to be specifically religious to understand that these are very important laws. Number two are the edus. Those are the testimonies. Those are all the laws of the holidays. Shabbat, tefillin, circumcision. All these rules and regulations that, although not rational, I mean, why would you sit down on a regular Tuesday night and eat a piece of flatbread with bitter herbs and charoises? That's something we wouldn't probably start as a religion, right? If we kind of decided among ourselves, hey, everybody, let's start a religion, and the first thing we're going to do is we're going to have everybody on Tuesday night eat flatbread and horseradish as the main course in a delicious meal. Probably not. That would probably get voted down, but because we came from Egypt and we know that our history, so therefore we have Shabbat and we have the holidays, we have all this. Okay, fine. All right. That's number three is chukim. Those are statutes that are what we call super rational. I mean, we don't really get to the bottom of it. We can speculate, like the red heifer. We talked about previously about the red heifer. Someone comes into contact with a corpse. You have to purify yourself in the days of the temple. How do you purify yourself? You find a red heifer, you burn it, you sprinkle the ashes on someone's head, and the person becomes purified. What does a red cow have to do with being able to walk into the Temple Mount? It doesn't make much sense whatsoever for rational people like here in the United States of America, but we call this a chok. This is something that God set down. This is the way this is what He wants it, and that's the way it is. I mean, wearing wool and linen together in one garment, it's called shatnez. What's the problem with wearing wool and linen together in one garment? Mm-hmm. No, this is the way God wants it, so it's forbidden. So these are called chukim. These are called statutes that God gave down to us. It's not historical, it's not rational, but these are some things that we follow because we're Jews, and it says in the Torah, and that's the way we do it. We do it because of it. Now you can speculate. There's no law and against speculation, and trying to think of why would wool and linen, everything needs its own little space, everything needs its breathing room. Maybe you don't want to mix, so you're prohibited from planting a vineyard next to a garden, next to a field that produces wheat. You can't put it right next to each other. It's called kalayim. There has to be a separation. Okay, every species may need its elbow room. Okay, I get it, but fine. Then it comes to kosher. To these things, split hoofs and chewing its cud. So you think to yourself, I mean, why? I mean, I know these are domesticated animals and they're farm animals and they're not wild. Okay, I understand, but a horse is also not a wild animal. I mean, it's also domesticated. And other animals are you could domesticate them after a while if you worry, but. That is that the reason? So people speculate why so I get the chewing of the cud. I get that, because you know what? When you're eating, one should eat like that. You should eat deliberately, slowly, take your time. You know what? That's why the chazer. You call someone a chazer. Why do you call someone a chazer? Now you shouldn't call anybody a chazer. But if you ever call somebody a chazer, why would you call them a chazer? Chazer is a pig because they eat like a pig. You know how do a pig eat? They're eating a trough. They all go grab there, in the dirty, in the filth, and they're eating away fine. Okay, so chewing the cud is, you see people who eat deliberately, that think about the food, that have the time, and that's the way a person should eat, rather than coming in like a vulture, just devouring the food and not thinking about it. So I get the chewing of the cud. It slows you down. It gets you thinking about what you're eating, how lucky we are. We never think about that. When you ate breakfast this morning, did you put 2 minutes of time into thinking how lucky you are that you have breakfast? Think about, there's millions of people around the world that are starving, that have no breakfast, that wake up in the morning and wish they would have a breakfast. Who thinks about that in America? No one thinks about that. All we think about that, who didn't replace the milk? Okay, we ran out of milk, and who's the last one to take the last milk? That's when we get out of sorts, and the whole day is ruined because someone didn't buy the milk, or who took the last cookie, or who took the last bit of cereal. Now I have to eat kale. You know what? That would ruin my day. It's okay. So we don't think about that. So what chewing the cud does is it slows you down. We're a fast-paced world because you know what? Look at the restaurants. We even have restaurants, chains that call themselves what? Fast food. That means you roll in there, and the goal is by the time you order your burger, till the time you leave the parking lot, it's over. You've done already with lunch. 30 seconds and that burger. Because you see on TV, everything adds 10 pounds on TV. Like right now I'm looking at myself. Everything adds 10 pounds for the camera, adds 10, 15, 20 pounds, and all of that stuff. But on TV, they show the burgers like this. In all reality, the burgers are like this. The 2 cents worth, of a burger. So you're finished fast. So chewing the cud, I understand. Slow down, be deliberate. Take your time, think about what you're eating, appreciate what you're eating. All right, I understand. Splitting hoofs, I saw an explanation of the split hoofs. An animal with split hoofs is never completely firm on the ground. If your hoof is completely covered, like a horse, is steady. A cow is not steady. What else has split hoofs? Deers and split. Okay. So a person is never to become too arrogant. You're always kind of walking on a split hoof, like I said. Okay, if that makes sense to you, fine. If that's a good lesson in life, that you never should become too arrogant, too self-sure about yourself, like standing on terra firma. That's great. Okay, fine. If that's an explanation of why God wanted the split hoof, so you should always remember that you always have to rely on God. You're never really firmly settled on your own self. Okay, so those are the 2 characteristics of an animal. So if these 2 characteristics you have it, the animal is kosher. Now, it doesn't tell us in this parsha, in this section, it doesn't tell us how you have to get to eat them. So as far as we're concerned here, you can take a cow and just tear it apart and just eat it. It doesn't matter. The one with it. No. But later on it says you have to, what we call it, shecht it. You have to now slaughter it. Okay, what does that mean? You have to slaughter it. So in order for it to be a kosher animal, you have to have what was called a chalif, which is a very, very sharp knife. And it's very, very, very finely made with no blemishes. If you've ever been to a slaughterhouse, you know that the shochet, that's the slaughterer. He very carefully inspects the knife. Any blemish, any dent in the knife renders it unkosher. When the knife is perfectly sharp, you have to slaughter the animal, let the blood go out. You drain the blood. And then you have, you check the animal, make sure that it's healthy, because if the animal is sick, then it's what we call a treifa, then it's not a kosher animal. And if it dies before shechting, this is also not, it's not a kosher animal, a nevela, and that's it. So once the animal is slaughtered, you open up the animal and you check the inside, make sure that the lungs are okay and everything okay. If the animal is healthy and it's good, and there's a sheichet and a baidik, it means a slaughterer and a checker. Good, boom, the animal is kosher. Then, of course, the Torah then adds on, you should not drink blood. So you have to drain some of the blood of the meat, meaning that, if you take a piece, you want a steak, you have to take a piece of meat, put salt on it, drain the salt, so it draws out the salt. Whatever's left in there after that process is kosher. Even though there's still blood in there, you go into a kosher restaurant and order a rare steak, you're still going to see blood. That blood is kosher. What you can draw out, that's the non-kosher blood, and then the rest of it is. So that's basically, and then you can eat. The meat if you're so inclined. I'm not telling you should eat meat, but if you're so inclined, that's the way you have a kosher dish. Has to have split hoofs, has to have chew its cud, and it has to be slaughtered, it has to be healthy, drain the blood, and then you're good to go. Then you can roast it, you can grill it, you can do anything else you want with the meat. Go ahead, Dave.
I was told that if you had liver and you broiled liver, that was kosher.
Now, the liver is a different thing, because liver is full of blood. So you can't put just salt on it. That's not going to do anything. You have to literally broil it. You have to broil it. So that's why I don't know. Some people like liver. When it became a chopped liver. Yes, I get chopped liver. That's a Jewish staple. I mean, if you want to be Jewish, you have to have at least some chopped liver. But pieces of liver itself. We used to eat that. My mother used to make liver. Yeah, but you have to broil it, because that's the only way that you can pull out the blood, because there's so much blood concentrated, in it. And then you can do whatever you want with it. You can grill it, you can roast it, whatever you want to do with it. And that's it. There's your rules and regulations about kosher meat, at least. What about, doesn't say anything about fowl here, doesn't say anything about a chicken or a turkey or anything like that. Well, by extension, we're going to find out soon in a moment that, these are the animals that you can eat. As a chicken you can eat, and a turkey you can eat. An ostrich, no, because an ostrich is an animal, you can't eat an ostrich. But turkeys and chickens and what else is there among that? Duck that you can eat, and a goose you can eat, and all these animals you can eat. But they still consider animals, and you need to shech them. So you need to shech the turkey, you need to shech the chicken, but you don't need to do the same things you did for an animal. You make sure it's healthy. You have to salt it. Like, if I know my mother in the olden days, when we grew up in Montreal, we used to go to the market, buy a chicken. You brought it to the slaughter. He would slaughter it for you, the sheikhid, and then they would wrap it up in paper and send it home with you. And I would bring it home to my mom, and she would cut it up in pieces and salt it and make it kosher. You have to, and that's why when you go to a kosher restaurant, don't ask for salt. The meat is already salted beyond anything, so you don't need any extra salt on the meat, because it's been salted and rinsed, and that's it. So chicken you can have, and turkey you can have, and goose you can have, and duck you can have. Okay, so now we're happy. Okay, we have now the characteristics for how you can eat meat. Okay, then it goes into fish. Okay, which fish are kosher? No, fish also have characteristics that make them kosher. What are they? Have to have two specific characteristics. Number one, it has to have fins, little fins, and number two, it has to have scales all over its body. Those fish with fins and scales, those are kosher. So if you're out there in the middle of the river or lake or wherever you are, and you throw your fishing rod in, and you and pill it up, and you look, okay, fins, little fins, okay, scales all over it. Mazel tov, it's a kosher fish. You have yourself a tuna or a halibut or a chvesvat, and it's whatever, all those fish, kosher. You pull it up, no fins, no scales, no catfish, no sense. Now, there are some fish which when you pull up out of the water seem to lose their scales. Okay, this became a question in Jewish law, whether if a fish, when you take it out of the water and it has no scales, is it kosher or not kosher? Because in the water it had scales. When you take it out of the water, it loses its scales. So So Rashi writes clearly here, kosher. As long as it has scales in the water, if you pull it out of the water, it loses its scales. It doesn't matter. It's still kosher. So it has to have those two characteristics. So is a dolphin kosher? Why would you eat a dolphin anyways? It's such a smart animal. A dolphin. I mean, a dolphin, you can communicate. It makes nice sounds. And it always reminds me, what's that dolphin when I was a kid? Flipper. A flipper. Are you going to eat flipper? Come on. I can eat flipper. So dolphins are out. Whales? See, the problem is, whales should be kosher because you can feed a whole town with a whale. You have one whale. Imagine on Shabbos, you catch a whale, you bring it into town. The whole town can have gefilte fish for a year off a whale. Is a whale kosher? No. You can't eat a whale. No, I'm sorry. I can't eat a whale. So only fish that have fins and scales that are kosher. So, you go along and then you find salmon, kosher, halibut, kosher, herring, kosher. You have a whole list of these kosher fish, and then you can do it, but you don't have to shech them. Fish are not the same as raw laws of animals that you have to slaughter them in some way. They just die or whatever you do to them. I'm not going to get into the specifics. You know what? You can have them however you want. You want to grill them, you want to broil them, you want to cook them, whatever it is. You want to gefilte fish. I also get into the gefilte fish story. It's all kosher, except of course any fish that is popular here in America, like shrimp. Is shrimp kosher? No, none of those crustaceans are kosher. Lobster, not kosher. Scallops, not kosher. Everything. So let me tell you a small story, because this story you'll remember. So I happen to like. I don't know what you happen to like to watch on TV, but I happen to like the cooking show. I don't know why, because I live by osmosis, like, vicariously. Vicariously, I live off this, because since you can't eat anything on those shows, so so some of the chefs you get to know, like I can know them personally. I call them on the phone. How are you? This. So I had a friend who worked at Disneyland. I worked at Disneyland, and Disney used to put on from time to time, these celebrity chefs used to come to put on one of these things. So she called me one day, my friend, and says, Michael Irving is coming. I don't know if you're ever familiar with him. He's a big, tall guy, strong, a big guy. Chef Irving is coming. Would you like to come and try? I say, hey, why not? It would be fun to be there and meet him and all that. Okay, fine. I'm sitting there. I feel like a fish out of water. I mean, here I am with a yarmulke, and scales. He comes out there. He's, starting today, we are going to make something delicious. Scallops. I was hoping for tuna tartare, but okay. He's making scallops. He comes out there with his helpers. They're pouring, they're making, they're doing, they're flipping. Okay. Now I need somebody from the audience that is going to taste the scallops. You. Come on up here. I would love to, Chef Irvin. I'm allergic to fish. I wasn't going to say that's crazy. I said I don't eat fish. Okay, but why? Okay, so finally he did it. Got over. I had another taste. He asked me about 2 types of oil, which I said I like that oil. Yeah, fine, good. He turned out to be a very, very fine person, very nice guy. Because later on we interacted a few more times during his show, and then he stayed he said, okay, now I'll sign pictures, and the rabbi goes first. The rabbi goes first, and everybody after the rabbi. And he said then at that time, just to show you, that there are 2 requests he will always honor. Children, if someone calls, like, for God forbid, a sick child, or something, hospital, St. Jude's, whatever, and the military. Because he was a military man, so those 2 are his favorite charities. And at that time, someone in our shul was very sick, a child, and I asked him to please sign a thing. He wrote such a beautiful piece on a poster of his, to my friend, how, then all of that stuff, and he gave it to me. So he was a good mensch, but what it taught me was scallops are not kosher. That taught me. Scallops are not kosher, so because it doesn't have fins and it doesn't have scales, has nothing. As a matter of fact, so those two things are out. Only fins and scales. Okay, so then we begin to speculate. What's the difference of fins and scales? Why, you can eat a halibut, but you can't eat a catfish. You can eat a tuna, but you can't eat a shark. What's the difference? Both swim in the water. They're all, okay, so people start to speculate. Okay, so what are scales? What do scales do for a fish? Protection. Scales are protection, right? So in case someone wants to puncture them, no, the scales are going to... Okay, so what do we need? We as Jews, when we're in the outside world, you know what? And the world is not friendly to us as not talking about as an individual, but as a religion, because we live in a very, very, very big world, and we're a very small population in a big world. So take the United States of America. So we here in America, we try to live our lives as best possible, let's say according to the rules and regulations of the Torah. The society doesn't care about that. Society not only does it not care about that, it's just, the prevailing thing is it's silly. I mean, why fins and scales? Why would you even think about that? Or even eating kosher, split hooves. So society mocks religion and it mocks tradition. So what do we need to be able to survive? Scales. You have to have that protective layer about you to say to yourself that I'm not going to allow the scoffers, and the people in the community that to joke about us and ridicule us, that religion and tradition is old-fashioned. And I'm not only talking about the Gentiles. I'm talking about Jews as well. Mostly from the Jews you're going to get it, than anybody else. So what? So number one is you have to develop scales, meaning you have to develop thick skin. So people ask you, Rabbi, you want to come with us to the ball game on Friday night? Then you have to say, no. Why not? It's Shabbos. Come on. Shabbos. What's Shabbos? You'll keep next Shabbos, but I got tickets, Lakers, the playoffs. Come on. Sorry, I'm a Jew. I'm not. How about joining us for a meal? At whatever it is. I can't. Not kosher. Kosher schmosher. Well, kosher schmosher. It's old-fashioned. In times of Moses, it was good. So the first thing you got to develop if you want to be strong is you got to develop scales. You got to develop that thick skin to say to somebody, I'm really sorry, but I can't have the bacon because I'm a Jew and I'm not faking. You get it? Get it? You get it? Okay, there you go. That's an old camp song that I had to bring up quickly. Okay, so I'm sorry. I can't have it, even though it's the most popular food and everybody loves it. And they talk about it. It's not for me. It's not for me. Like Rashi says, why did Hashem give us these rules and regulations? And he writes, because God knows of our delicate constitution as Jews, and we have this balance, this very delicate thing. So these are kosher, these are not kosher. It's like a medical doctor that knows what's good for you, what's not good for you. And Hashem said, for you, for the Jewish people, this is what's good for them. A cow is good, halibut is good, tuna is good, shrimp is no good, chazer is no good. So that's what we rely on God. He's the ultimate doctor, and this is our menu, and this is healthy for us. So I want to stay spiritually healthy. Although, I'll give you 1 second. Although, when we talk about health, if you're an Ashkenazi Jew, okay, and you grew up among people that came from Eastern Europe, very healthy. They ate very healthy. Gribbenis. Everybody know what gribbenis is? That's fried chicken or whatever, fried fat. Okay? So not only is it fat, but it's fried. Okay? Think about that. Okay?
It's not fried, it's cooked down.
You could cook it, but if you fry it in oil, oh, it's so delicious. You know how delicious it is? It's so delicious that you feel your arteries closing. Okay? That's it. You swallow it, and as you're swallowing, you feel literally your arteries are closing, and a pound of gribbenis will definitely get you into the Heart Institute in LA. Okay? Kishka. Real, I'm not talking about the fake kishka they sell now. I'm talking about real intestines of the cow, where you're stuffed with all this kind of chazarai, and you eat it. So when we think about these, kishka is kosher, gribbenis is kosher, all these things are kosher. Are they healthy?
No.
Who says no? Just because the average age of people dying in Europe was 30, why would you say it was not kosher? Why would you say that? If a guy lived to 33, oh, look at that old man, he's probably collecting Social Security. Okay? So it has nothing to do with health or not health. Because I could tell you, a doctor, if you told them you're eating gribbenis, would tell you, please, go off the gribbenis and start eating something more healthy like kale. Like kale. Okay? But at least if you eat 30 years of gribbenis, you'll die happy. 75 years of kale, you may have lived 75 years. Okay, forget about it. Let's not go there. But so number one is the scales, you need the scales as a protective thing. And then let me do the fins, and then I'm going to give Marcy, she's so anxious. I know she's biting at the bit to say, but let me just do the fins. Now, what do the fins do? Why does the fish have fins? Because that's how it swims with direction, right? If it wants to go to the left, it wants to go to the right. So a Jew needs direction. Okay, a Jew needs those fins that direct him in a time where we're living in a world of spiritual darkness, and it's cloudy. You don't know where to go. The Torah gives us fins. Torah gives us fins, and it shows us a clear direction that this is where we should go, this is where we shouldn't go, this is good, this is not good, and that's the fins and the scales. We grow a protective coat around us to protect us from the outside world, and then also the Torah gives us directions of what's right and what's wrong, and that's why these fish are kosher and these fish are not kosher. And now, Marcy, go ahead.
If it's about protection, why is the shell of a lobster or a crab not a better
Okay, so you didn't end in. I did not say it's about protection. I'm speculating why someone would give us a commandment to have scales. It has nothing to do with protecting the animal, because the fish without scales, with scales, doesn't matter. This is. I'm just speculating now why we would give these two things is scales. But the rationale is not about being protective, because you're absolutely right. A lobster is better protective. It's really hard. In that case, a turtle should be kosher, right? Turtle soup. Who doesn't?
Armadillo.
An armadillo, a porcupine, porcupine. So it has nothing to do really with safety. I'm just speculating of why God would pick scales. Is because a person, in America, in this kind of an environment, in this kind of climate, where what we want to do as traditional Jews is not well accepted, is not well, is not applauded. It's like the story of the lady on the New York subway. You know that story I've told you of Mrs. Feldman? She's sitting on the subway and a chassid is sitting next to her. You know how a chassid looks? Not like me. I mean, I'm a modern chassid, with a blue shirt, But this is guy with a big black hat, long beard, long payas, long black coat. She goes up to him and she says to him, you people, with your religion, it's so old fashioned. Why can't you come into the 21st century? He says to her, I'm sorry, ma'am. I'm not Jewish. I'm Amish. So she says to him, oh, it's so nice you people keep your traditions. So nice you people keep your traditions. You see, to the Amish, so nice you live in Lancaster and you still ride horse and buggy. But to a chassid, so that's why I'm talking about the shell, but that has nothing to do, again, it's not the reason why God did this. That's a speculation.
It's not about seafood in particular being bottom feeders.
Look. I'm going to quote here from Maimonides, okay, from the Rambam, which is a pretty good source. Why does he write about these laws? Because he argues because these are laws that have to do with cleanliness and uncleanliness. We're going to go back to the domesticated animals. Since a chazer is not a clean animal, so God forbid it. It's all about cleanliness and health purposes. So he wants to speculate that it's all about healthy animals. So bottom crawlers, who knows what they eat and what they take and what they digest and what they do that. So okay, but not everybody agrees to him that this is a matter of cleanliness and uncleanliness. And again, I don't think he means to say that this is the reason d'etre that God said, because there are clean animals, wild animals that are very clean, that keep clean and extremely clean, but they're not kosher. But he just wants to say specifically about the chazer, why chazer is not kosher. That has to do with cleanliness. But if it had to do with cleanliness, then we would outlaw all animals. If you would talk about clean, a cow is clean. I mean, look at a cow. It's clean. And, so again, all it has to do with the laws of kashrus is, I would say, it falls into the category of chukim. It falls into this category of super rational laws. Super rational, that God said, this is kosher, this is not kosher, this you can eat, this you can't eat. The outside of that, once we have that established, then we can kind of speculate why, what, when, and where. But the reasoning is not going to change the fact that it is a rule and regulation. So let's say, for example, we would breed a chazer that's going to be extremely clean. They say, you know what, in Spain, there's an area where you have beautiful, domesticated, clean black pigs. They're very, these pigs only eat acorns. Their meat is, I only know this because someone told me this. Okay, someone told me about them. I don't know personally any pigs from Spain, but At least, the animal. But then, I'm not talking about the Inquisition, Torquemada and those guys. Okay, that's a different story. We're not going to get into that, right now. But the animal itself. So here you have a beautiful black pig, very clean. Only eats acorns. Oh, the meat is to die for. Kosher. It's clean. No, it's still a pig. A chazer is still a chazer, even though when the chazer like hides itself and only shows its feet. What is the chazer trying to do? What's it trying to say? I'm kosher, right? Look, I have split hooves. We know it's behind the curtain. You're still a chazer. Okay, even though you may have some characteristics of kashrus, you're still a chazer. I know that's a different sermon for another day. People that have some qualifications like that. But that's the story with kashrus. Then it goes into a long about birds, and the birds is interesting because I'm sorry, Steve. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Such a well-behaved guy wouldn't say anything.
I raise hand a second time because I want to make sure. Basically, Marcy again with the health seems like I just checked again with scales. There's like collagen. There's some thinking that these are wise people. Naturally, this comes from God. So there are some health, so we can link onto it to try to understand it. Sure. But the thing that's kind of in a current day is that it talks about swarming, which I guess I don't know if we're going to get into for the bird, but there's also with the fish. We're not supposed to see things as swarm. And now, what do I eat that swarms? Farm-raised salmon. Sure. Now am I looking at something that's because they're sitting in they're in a trap pen and they're just behaving like they're in a swarm.
Kosher.
They're swarmed by humans.
They're swarmed by humans. So I'm not sure swarming is a factor in making kosher or not kosher, because you have schools of fish like salmon swarm no matter what. I mean, even naturally salmon, swarm. So I'm not so sure if that's as a calculation. With birds, the calculation comes out pretty easy. God forbid any bird that is like a vulture. You know what a vulture does?
Yes.
What does it do?
Kills.
It eats you when you're dead, right? So all of those kind of wild birds, like a vulture and an eagle, all these birds. So God forbid them, an owl, bats, all of these things that are forbidden. Anything else that's not included in here is kosher, like a dove, a turtle dove, all these other birds, are kosher to eat. So that I think is pretty not black and white, because you do have something very interesting. Like there's a bird that's called a chasida. He mentions here the chasida is not kosher. What is the chasida? A stork, which always was interesting to me. Why a stork is not? Because it delivers babies. So why would a stork? Why would a stork not be kosher? It was one of the best birds in the world. I mean, you think about it, that without the stork we wouldn't be able to populate ourselves. So why would the stork not be able to do that? So I was always wondering about the properties of a stork. But on the other, in all seriousness, what is the term? If you think of the word chasida, what's the root of the word? Chesed. What does chesed mean? Kindness. It's a beautiful. If you take, for example, the adage that you are what you eat, right? So if you eat a chazer, if you eat a behemoth, you are what you eat. So why would a chasida? Why would a stork? Why is it named chasida? I mean, in Chulin it tells us why. Because a stork does kindness with its surroundings, with its family. So that's why it's called chasida. So you think to yourself, there's a perfect bird to eat. If it has such qualities that it's so good, why we are not to eat it? So then, of course, you keep reading along the lines. It only does good with its family. Outside of its family, now listen, I'm not a veterinarian, but like a bird specialist, one of those ornithologists, that tracks birds and follows birds. But If a stork only does well with its family, but excludes everything else, that's not a characteristic that we're going to reward, and that's why the Hasidah is not kosher. So stork is not kosher, herons are not kosher, your owls are not kosher, all different types of owls, and then there's all of these creepy little crawlers, the beetle, the centipede, the scorpion, the ant, all of these things that are not kosher, a weasel, a hedgehog, a chameleon, all of these things. God said they're creepy crawlers. They crawl on the ground and they eat all of these things. So stay away from sheketsu. They're detestable. Why are they detestable? Why are they detestable? It's funny because all of a sudden, in the middle of all of this, he talks about grasshoppers, and then he keeps saying, detestable, detestable, detestable. All of these crawling things are detestable, except if you happen to have one of these grasshoppers that has its legs higher than its head, and it leaps with them. This characteristics, kosher. Arb is kosher. This is kosher. That's kosher. So grasshoppers all of a sudden are kosher. So that throws our entire world into confusion. A grasshopper, yeah, but a wasp, no. A bee, no. You can't eat a bee. A bee produces honey, it's so good. No, a bee you can't eat. An ant you can't eat. But a grasshopper, go ahead. Cover it with chocolate, chocolate covered grasshopper. And I see now, why don't we eat grasshoppers? You go to a restaurant today anywhere in America, kosher restaurant, ask, I would like grasshoppers. They say, no, sorry, we don't carry grasshoppers. Because again, there's so many different types of grasshoppers, hundreds of different species of grasshoppers. Only a few of them are kosher, since we lost the tradition of which are good, which are not good. But I did see recently now a notification in Israel that there are places that are selling kosher grasshoppers. Now, if you trust the rabbi who went back and did research and found out which of the grasshoppers are kosher, and you have this hunkering for roasted grasshopper or whatever, I don't even know how you eat it. First of all, what can you get out of it? I mean, how much meat can you get out of a grasshopper? Not much. It's the crunch. It's like popcorn more. It's more like popcorn than anything else. So go ahead and enjoy it. So therefore, this whole idea again of the testability that it's crawling on the ground. And where does a grasshopper live? In a penthouse? Well, grasshoppers, they fly around just like anything else, all of this. So this whole idea, again, of the testability of the animal being detestable because it crawls on the ground, kind of goes out the window because of this grasshopper, thing. Now, you want to say the grasshoppers, I can't even imagine what their attributes would be that put them into the kosher world, but nonetheless, we know, again, going back over everything else, this is literally a chukkah. This is what God decided. You know what? You can eat a chicken, but you can't eat a porcupine. Okay? That's not that anybody would want to eat a porcupine, but just in case. Now, a chicken is a bird. Now. There's one. God forbid, if someone is starving, that means you're out somewhere and you're in a forest and you're starving, and the only thing out there is a porcupine. Enjoy, because the laws of kashrus then get superseded by the idea of v'chai bahem, that you should live by doing the mitzvahs, and there's no mitzvah to die of starvation. So you hope that if you're ever starving, starve near an In-N-Out. Okay? I'm not saying you should eat the burgers. Why do you think right away the burgers? I was talking about a drink, water. That's what you get at the In-N-Out. Right away people think, the double. I mean, whatever it is. But that's another rule. Marcy, go ahead.
What about crickets? Are they kosher?
Are they in the category? Yeah, that part. Some are. What does it say? The crickets? Yes, right. Crickets are. But again, you have to find out the species of cricket. Again, you could if you go online and Google, grasshopper crickets, it's an enormous amount of varieties, an enormous amount of them, and some of them have these wings, and some of them have these legs that they leap, and some don't have it. So you got to be an expert with them. I would not eat a cricket. I would not eat a cricket if someone said to me, "Hey, Rabbi, I researched it and that cricket is good." I'd say, you know what? That's kind of one of the things that I have no hunkering for. No hunkering for. Then you have all other now besides this, that these are the kosher animals that you're allowed to eat and what you're not allowed to eat, and we speculate about their characteristics, why this, why that, and all of that. There are other rules, like for example, that we made that a cow is what we call fleishik. Now later on, we already had one rule, you should not cook a kid in its mother's milk, which tells us that you should not really cook together milk and meat together, and that extended not only to a kid like a lamb or a goat or whatever, that extended to all kind of domesticated animals. So for example, cow, you shouldn't cook with milk, and milk is only milk. Why is milk milchik? I mean, if you think about it for a second, milk should be the most fleishik thing. Where does it come from? A cow. If you get milk from anywhere else, call me. Okay? Because so far, and I'm not talking about coconut milk, and I'm not talking about that kind of milk. I'm talking about milk. So milk comes from a cow. Why should that be kosher, be fleishik? The only reason why milk is milchik is what we call a gzeris hakosov, because God said milk is milchik, and everything that comes from milk is milchik. So like butter, cheese, and all of that stuff, and everything else is fleishik. So therefore, these two things don't mix together, the milk and the meat. So then you have to have it separated. So we know, like for example, you can't cook a steak, you can't really marinate it in milk, and cook it, because that's fleishik, basar v'chalav. Basar v'chalav is not only prohibited from eating, it's also prohibited from cooking, and prohibited from derive any pleasure from it. You see, non-kosher animals, you could derive pleasure from them. I mean, like for example, if you buy a belt that's made out of pigskin, nothing wrong with that. You can wear the belt. Not basar b'chalav. If meat and milk was cooked together, you literally have to throw it out without deriving any pleasure. You can't give it away. You can't do anything with it, because the prohibition is so strong. And then we've talked about it before. They've extended it to not only to animals, but to chicken and to goose and to duck and all of that stuff. What about fish? So fish, good question for those who want to know about fish. Fish are parv. Fish are parv. Fish you can have. So you can have like a tuna melt, no problem. You can have cheese together with the tuna. Now, before you leave the room, there are people that will not eat fish together with meat, because it says in Shulchan Aruch it's a danger. So somewhere in the Middle Ages, this became dangerous for eating fish and meat together. So if you go to religious homes, first off, you can have in the same meal. You see, milk and meat you can't have in the same meal. But you could have fish as a starting dish. Then you rinse out your mouth with a shot of scotch or something like that. You go to a Shabbat, go to a traditional Shabbat dinner. What's it going to be? First you have challah. Right after challah you have fish. Okay, you have fish. After fish you have the soup. But between the fish and the soup you have to say l'chaim. You got to rinse out your mouth. So the Americans drink with a little water, or they may have like grape juice. But Hasidim use the opportunity to say l'chaim, or vodka, scotch, bourbon, whatever it is. Then you have the chicken soup and the fish and the chicken, and so on and so forth. Okay, so it's not prohibited from eating together in the same meal, but on the same plate. You'll notice. So that's fish, but milchik is okay. Marcy.
So fish, if it doesn't have to be ritually slaughtered,
correct.
And
Okay.
I keep a kosher home.
Yes.
Can I just buy it in the store?
Yes, you can buy it in the store. You just have to be careful with the knife that they use to chop it up. So many people go, like for example, if you see salmon, like at a store, you can buy that salmon, because there's nothing wrong with that salmon. If you want it filleted, like say for example, then you just got to make sure that the knife is clean, and the knife, because if you cut up, let's say for example, a non-kosher fish, and then you use it for the same fish, there may be residue. But other than that, you go to Costco, they have these big pieces of salmon. There's no problem with eating that salmon.
Whole fish.
It's a fish. It's a fish.
Okay, briefly, Rabbi, first of all, when you said the three categories. There's mishpatim and chukim. Is it like in Ahavat Olam where you have mitzvot is the third?
Now, mitzvot is commandments. You have mishpatim, chukim, and eidot.
How do you spell that?
Eidoth.
Eidot. Okay, Eidot. Why do they
It's on a spelling bee, right?
Why
We're
do they call it
not in a
Eidot?
national spelling bee in San Diego.
Another question in Camp Vermont. Why do they call it Eidot Olive, Eidot Bet? Is that the same Eidot?
Ada means congregation. Could be Ada. It comes also from the same word aid, which means a witness. Eidot means these are testimonies. Like, for example, testimonies like Shabbat, testimonies like prayer, testimonies like Pesach, which testify that we have a history behind us and we're there.
The second question I wanted to make a comment is, I don't know of any other religion or group, and I don't care because I have enough trouble, is just discussing this and listening is a mitzvah for all of us because we sit down, we don't fight, but we absorb, we take what we want, and we live and let live, and we not only let live, but we encourage life.
Totally.
The third thing that you reminded me of, which my mother always said, the laws are made to live by, not to die by. So if you're on Yom Kippur and you got to have bacon because in the old days you have to have iron. But here's the thing.
Yeah. I want to find that. I want to find that doctor that says if you have to eat, you have to eat bacon.
Yeah, you know. What's a joke? No.
Yeah. No.
But what you reminded me of is the spiritual difference between the Holocaust joke you told us, not joke, the story about we don't eat.
Right, on Yom Kippur, correct.
That distinguishes a people who know that difference.
Yes,
And that's
absolutely
that
true.
really struck me. I remember you telling that story.
Yes,
but was that based on a true story?
That's a true story.
Okay, all right.
This is a true story. So here you have the laws of kashrut. This is only like a little small sampling, of what it's like. If you go to the Code of Jewish Law, to the Shulchan Aruch, of course, there's many other rules and regulations that fall inside what happens if you're making a soup and some milk falls into the soup.
Yeah.
What you have to do with the soup and etc. etc. You wash a spoon, in the fleischer condition washer. There's a lot of different rules and regulations about a kitchen.
What's the percentage? 50%?
60 to 1. In some things are batel b'shishim. If you have a little bit of milk in a big giant soup, but you can only do that after the fact. You can't put in less than 1/60th in a chicken soup. Like saying, hey, you know what? I'm just going to drop a few milk. No, you can't do that. No, you can't do that. That's prohibited. But if you walk by and some of the milk fell into the soup by mistake, then it becomes bottled. Then it becomes nullified, in the soup. But there's all different rules and regulations of it, about kashrus. The main thing is, the question is about eating meat in general. There were rabbis that almost forbid eating meat, even though they said from the Torah's point of view you could, you shouldn't. Why? Because, as I mentioned before, you are what you eat. So any animal that you are going to take its life, they were religious people, and they felt terrible about taking the life of another creature. So, like for example, Rav Kook, who was one of the first rabbis of. He didn't make it to see the establishment of the state of Israel. He was during the British Mandate, the chief rabbi, I would call it still Israel. He was a vegetarian by nature because he argued that, we should try to go back to the original. He was an originalist. To go back to there were many rabbis they would not touch meat during the week. They would not eat meat, they would not eat chicken during the week. On Shabbat, they would have a little bit of meat. Just because Shabbat is different, they would have a little bit of meat. I'm just going to finish with the gefilte fish because that everybody wants to know. What's the story with the gefilte fish? Because I told you, gefilte fish comes in a jar. I had to once go into Vaughn's near our home to buy, I don't know why, but I bought a jar of gefilte fish, and the kid that was checking me out looked at it and said to me, "Do people eat this?" I said, no. I'm filming a movie. It's a horror movie. This is one of the props, So, what is the story with gefilte fish, and why did the gefilte fish? Now, gefilte means filled, chopped, gefilled, like gefilte. Chopped. Why do we have gefilte fish? Okay, this is the reason why. On Shabbos, the rules are very complicated about choosing. About picking, you're not allowed. It's called boirer. Boirer is, let's say if you have a soup and something falls into the soup, you're not allowed to really pick the fly out of the soup because you're choosing the fly from the soup. You have to sort of get the fly with some soup around it and then dump it out. Okay? That's the rules of boirer, of choosing. It's prohibited on Shabbos. Fish comes with a lot of bones. You're not allowed to stay there and pick out the bones from the fish. You got to take the fish from the bones. You know how tedious that is? If you ever eat fish, like my mother used to like to make fish and salmon and this, but you have to sit there and pick the fish out of the bones instead of the bones. The women got tired of doing that. They decided, you know what we're going to do? Just cook the whole thing and chop it into pieces. Put whatever else you find in the kitchen, a boot, arsenic, Jello, like honey, oil, like an old candelabra, wax, whatever you want, just put into that concoction, stir it around with an eye of a newt, go like, hey, then freeze it and boil it and cook it and roast it, and then you get gefilte fish. That's how you ended up with gefilte fish. And now it's a delicacy. Now the gefilte fish. Who can live if you don't serve gefilte fish? Where's the gefilte fish? Okay, that's how you get gefilte fish. Make it easy on Shabbat. That's the reason why we have gefilte fish. So you don't have to worry about it. There's no bones. There's nothing to worry about. Enjoy the gefilte fish. But remember, it's very sacrilegious if you only eat the gefilte fish. It has to be covered with something. Crane. It has to be covered with horseradish. And then, in America, we added one other thing that's called mayonnaise. What's mayonnaise? You put the crane together with the mayonnaise to kill the taste of the crane, which kills the taste of the fish, which kills the taste of the boot, which kills the taste of the animal, when my father bought for 2 zuzim, Chad Gadya. And that's the end of the story. Okay.